Okay.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Rowan's podcast. I am the Rowan. We're going to call this episode 24 and hope that's good. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and a comfy chair and let's chat. We have some exciting news today. We do have our first professional guest with us. This is Mr. Richard Featherly, who is a licensed social worker. Hello, Rich. How are you today?
Doing well.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Well, I was born at an early age in New York State. Lived in New York State until I was in my mid 20s and moved out here in 1988 into the UP. I was working in construction back then, but it was hard work and winters were rough. So I decided to become a nurse in 92. Got my degree from Stoney College in 94 and worked as a nurse for 16 years. And as I was doing that work, I found that my skills didn't match the nursing profession. You need to be able to do a whole lot of work in a little bit of time as a nurse.
Yeah.
There were a few jobs that I had that fit me well. Taking care of one person for a whole shift, private duty nursing, and I did that with a few different people. And then when I was taking care of a 3-year-old girl who needed a ventilator to breathe, and when her dad lost his job, he became her caregiver, and I lost my job working with her, and couldn't find any other work where it suited my skills or lack of skills. Um, so and I had already been thinking about going into counseling, so it was recommended that I do a social work degree. So I went to a mostly online program with Michigan State. Northern Michigan University has one like it now, but they didn't when I started in 2015. I was, let's see, 20 or I was 55 years old. My wife thought I was crazy to go, to start a program like that at that
You're never
age.
too young to learn.
But I had, yeah, right. So I got my MSW in 2018 and started working for a counselor and got a job at working at the doctor's offices up at Great Lakes Family Health Center, which, as you might know, has a lot of different clinics in the western UP. So I was more than half of the social workers working for 10 clinics, and that was way too busy. They wanted me to move to half-hour appointments, which you can't do anything, counseling-wise in a half hour. They wanted me to limit my number of clients, and they had way worse. They had way more severe symptoms and trauma at those doctor's offices than I ever have. People calling me now that I'm private, just
Yeah.
basically hanging my own shingles. So that's a brief summary of my career, my life.
Hmm. You've been through a lot of different jobs, but it looks like it was like a path leading you towards the right place where you should be, it seems like. So
Right, yeah.
it's a good thing, a really good
And
thing.
that's kind of how life is. You can't predict the future, but when you look back and see, oh, this led to this, this led to this.
Yeah. So we we were talking about um traumas and things like that, and you had told me
Mm-hmm.
about two studies, and I really wanted to share those with my listeners because I thought it was really interesting. And to me, the only time I've ever heard anything that was even remotely like this, and I don't mean to sound really silly, but like science fiction books or something like that, like
Mm-hmm.
along the lines of uh what is it, generational memories or whatever. I know this is not what we're talking about, but to me it kind of intertwines with it. But or it reminds me of it, in which I was really interested in these two studies because, well, as we get into it, people will understand. So, can you explain the PACES study?
It was originally called the ACE study. For ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. There is an organization that has a website called PACES Connection. They added the P for positive and adverse experiences. That way, it acknowledges the positive effect of what helps people not succumb to all the adverse things that happen to them as a kid. Because not everybody suffers from
Yeah.
having an adverse life as a kid. So the ACE study was mainly done in the 90s. There were two doctors who started it. One had a clinic an obesity clinic, people who needed to lose hundreds of pounds. He basically had them fasting and with supplements, vitamins, minerals, supplements, based on their labs, because they were doctors, they could check their labs. But they discovered that when people lost, 100, 200 pounds, they would drop out and gain it back. And so one doctor, Dr. Vincent Felitti, decided to interview the people who had dropped out and the people who hadn't. And he discovered that 55% of his obesity patients had been sexually abused as a kid.
Mm.
But he also heard about other forms of abuse and adverse experiences. So his main list of adverse experiences became sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional neglect. Your parents are just too distracted to even, acknowledge your existence practically, or physical neglect, which was, parents are too poor to feed you or, have decent clothes on you.
Yeah.
And then a few others like parents divorcing, which is, pretty easy one. Lots of people have that.
Yeah.
A family member going to prison, family with mental illness.
Oh, I lost you.
So there's 10 of them. I suppose we're still good on the phone. The picture disappeared, but we're still good on the phone.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So this doctor was in charge. This one or the other one who did the study was in charge of a insurance company in the southwestern U.S. So they sent out over 20,000 questionnaires to just test people about, what their experiences were as a kid. And he got over 17,000 of them back, which is great for sending out a survey.
Yeah.
And they discovered that adverse experiences as a kid is quite common. And since they could check the person's medical record, being in charge of their insurance, they discovered that the incidence of almost any disease or bad habit you can think of increased the more adverse experiences you had as a kid, more classifications, so 10 different adverse experiences could give a person a score of 0 to 10. And the higher your score, the more likely you had any major disease you can think of, or all the bad habits, addictions, things like that. So, and that study has been repeated many times in like different states. They've decided to do it for their own state, and the results are pretty consistent.
Wow.
So yeah. You have a question so far? Or I could go a little bit more about limitations of the study and.
Yeah.
So one limitation. Oh yeah, you had a question. Okay, go ahead.
No, I don't. No, yeah, go ahead with the.
Okay. So yeah, one limitation was that the people in the study were all people who had health insurance and they had that health insurance because they have a good job,
Yeah.
a job that has enough benefits that they gave them that health insurance. So we were studying middle class, maybe even upper middle class people, um, and it missed things like living in poverty, living in a war zone. You live in a city and your friends get shot every once in a while. It missed things like that. So there's that limitation. Other studies had to start counting things like that besides just the first 10 that were considered to be adverse experiences.
Yeah, I was just going to ask
Um,
you, did anyone else start up a study with the ones that they missed? Because I'd find that would be interesting to look
yeah,
at.
I haven't heard about. I haven't. When I used to go to a newsletter of that Paces, it's called Paces Connection. It was that website for that organization that tries to educate people about adverse childhood experiences and positive experiences. And sometimes they would give the results of a study that showed the effect of things like poverty and things like you know, feeling at risk of getting shot, in your life. And so that organization has been in business for probably at least a decade, if not more.
Hmm. Yeah, I did look up that site. I did go to that after we were talking,
Mhm.
did a little looking around on it and stuff. Um, and it also brought me to um, well, the ones that I had a lot of questions on was the cherry blossom um,
Oh, sure.
uh, study. Because I kind of thought that those kind of maybe they kind of go together, don't they? I mean, they weren't actually
They
together,
do.
but they kind of
Mm-hmm.
sort of go together. And this is the one that I
They
was
do.
talking about. I've only heard in like science fiction type things with the results of this, and I know
Yeah.
that's not what it is, but it just kind of reminded me reminded me of it. Um,
Yeah.
can you explain the cherry blossom experiment that they did?
Sure. So they were doing research on using mice, and they trained some male mice to be afraid of the smell of cherry blossoms by giving them shocks. Not nice, not
Mm,
very nice, not very compassionate towards little mice. But
mm,
anyway, they trained them to be afraid of the smell of cherry blossoms, and they took they did artificial insemination to some female mice with sperm from those male mice, and we took the offspring of those female mice, um, and they were also afraid of the smell of cherry blossoms, even though they never met their dads.
hmm,
Um, and then they did that again, so they went to the next generation, so the grandkids of the original male mice that were trained to be afraid of the smell of cherry blossoms, and the grandkids were also afraid of the smell of cherry blossoms. And I don't know if they did a great grandkids study or not, but it just showed that fear somehow can be passed on through generations. And when we talk about the effects of adverse experiences, we're talking about the effects that fear has on your nervous system and therefore the rest of your body, the health effects.
I did some research on it, and I'll be honest, I don't like without really getting really into it because I did like some vague research on it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I get real in depth on it, and I should because this is really interesting though. But what I did find was that it it doesn't like this would not change the DNA. It is like a kind of like a memory, but not. it doesn't change the DNA, but it does leave a marker on how it's read or something, it said. And
Right. Yeah.
so then when it's read, then like the body somehow has that fear coded in somehow into the DNA, but it doesn't change the DNA, but it's coded in there somehow. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and then it said it was talking about like for humans like who have experienced like a traumatic event or whatever, like say
Mhm.
9/11, that like a marker could be encoded into their DNA, which would affect their children.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but like I said, it said it didn't change the DNA; it just put it like a marker in there. It was interesting.
Hmm.
And I need to do more.
Yeah. I think about yeah.
Yeah,
Our DNA is like the blueprints for a house. And imagine a set of blueprints that give you lots of options. Your porch can look like these 5 different ways. Your roof can be shaped these 6 different ways. Your inner floor plan can be, these 12 different ways. And when you build the house, you're going to use one of each choice. So
right.
our genes are like that, and our body can decide which genes to read and which ones not to read. And that's where those markers come in. The markers, if you live in an area where there's lots of saber-toothed tigers, your genes are somehow going to be marked so that you're better off escaping a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
How that happens, who knows?
And the weird thing is for me is I'm this thought just occurred to me. So say you're in a say you've been in an abusive relationship, or say you were abused as a child, or maybe you got into abusive
Yeah.
relationship when you get older. Um, the thought occurred to me that if you had this marker, say you have a marker put into you, now does that make you predisposed like for your kids to go into those type of relationships? Or I would think that maybe it would, like say if you're around saber tooth tigers like you said, and it would make you be afraid of them, and it might help you to do whatever you need to do to stay away from them. For me, I just thought, well, wouldn't it be good if this marker, if you had like this marker and your kids, you pass it on to your kids or whatever, or the kids get that marker,
Hmm.
wouldn't it, to me, it would seem like it would make the child be afraid of being in a relationship like that and to learn to adapt to not being in one rather than predisposed to being into one. Does that, am I making sense?
um, yeah, yes, and we like if if I had a parent who was abused, are they even going to, like, say they were abused as a kid but not as an adult? When I knew my parents, I never knew they were abused. But as a kid they were. When I wasn't around yet, um, I wouldn't know what kinds of relationships to avoid and which ones to try to get into. But my
Hmm.
nervous system would act in a way that would cause me to end up being with people who also act the same way. With the same defenses. If my my nervous system, my genetic code causes me to go into fight quite often, and I become a fighter. I become aggressive.
Right.
I'll hang out with other people who are aggressive and not even realize why.
Huh. I just find it interesting of how the brain works in the way that it does, and how
Hmm.
we do things like that without realizing, you know, that when you first
Yeah.
when you first started talking about the cherry blossom experiment, I just I thought it was interesting because at first I was thinking of generational memories. I could just put that memory into there, but then when then I read that about the marker going
Connection.
in there, that makes more sense. And so if the parent had been abused while they were a child
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they got into a relationship, then they had children, and those children had that marker and they had some other traumatic events. And I've asked you this before. Say
Yeah.
several generations later, there's just compounding of all this generational trauma. Um,
Right.
would that continue on? Would it just like become like this huge avalanche onto the following generations, or is there a way to heal that, to repair that
It
marker?
can. Um, right. It it can go either way. Some people will pass that pain, that those reactions on to their kids, and their kids will pass it on to their kids. But if there's a child who's being treated poorly by a parent who's just passing on their trauma, um, but that child has a teacher that really cares about them in school, or a grandparent who is healthy and not, maybe the parent of the other parent who's not abusive, and that grandparent makes the kid feel safe and acknowledged and connected. It can prevent that trauma from being passed on through the generations. Or the person gets some good therapy,
Yeah.
So it can go either way.
Hmm. Yeah, I have seen that where um some people who have been, had a horrible childhood to where they've been like immensely loving parents and
Yeah,
very
yeah.
supportive and stuff. But I've seen it the other way too, where it's
Right,
just
right.
continued to compound. Yeah. Um, then I always wonder like the nature versus nurture thing, you know,
Mhm.
um,
The the
whether
other way it can go is, you know, I can decide I'm not going to pass on my trauma from my parents who got it from their parents. I'm going, when I feel angry, I'm just going to stuff it down. I'm just going to stuff it down, and then it turns into physical health problems.
yeah,
so
yeah,
so it can affect a person in different ways. We're we're capable of living to 120 years old. So,
oh yeah,
if a person only lives to 58 or 70 or whatever, that's something happened to cause our health to not be as good as it could be.
do you imagine if we lived like really good lives where we didn't have all the bad things happen, how
Hmm.
much longer people would live and how much more healthier they would be. But
Yeah, probably a lot longer.
yeah,
In the ACE study, they found that a score of, I think, like a score above, I forget if it's 6 or 4. Anyway, if you have quite a few points on your ACE questionnaire that you fill out, compared to somebody with a score of 0, it knocks 20 years off your life on the
wow,
average.
wow,
Yeah,
that's wow.
yeah.
Hmm.
The, the trouble is, so many, our whole healthcare system just doesn't know what to do with that information. They kind of ignore it.
Yeah, because it's like I think of it as like it's a societal issue really with
Right.
the traumas and things like that. And I
Mhm.
mean, in order to fix that, like through healthcare, there would have to be. I think there would have to be a lot of
More
good.
social workers.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A lot of social workers, a lot of mental health care, a lot of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like just more supports, I think. And there's not enough supports for people. And I think that's why people turn
Hmm.
to anger and abuse and uh, negativity and stuff because there's not as much supports out there. And then it's stigmatized too. If someone wants to get help for something, then they feel kind of stigmatized that, "Oh, I must be a bad person because I'm going to go seek help or something." And
Hmm.
I think that also prevents people. So if it was more normalized that, hey, if you're angry or upset about something, hey, just go talk to this, or go get help there. It should be perfectly acceptable and fine. Um, but then also, like, if someone, like that study that I read about the 9/11, like those type of traumas, those types you can't really prevent really
Hmm.
from people from experiencing. But and I know they had like
Right.
counselors and stuff like that for it, but um, it should be more in-depth counseling, more help for that, more long term rather than you get 12
Right. Yeah.
sessions with somebody to talk. And because that type of trauma, that's going to last for a really long time, you know
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
just doesn't go away after 12 hours.
Right. Um, so different people experienced 9/11 in different ways, and they have different histories. So a person with a high ACE score who was like say 25 years old when 9/11 happened, and they were right next door, or they had people they care about in the building who died. Um, if they had a high ACE score, they're going to be more traumatized by that event than somebody who either had a low ACE score or had a high ACE score but had a lot of resilience factors. People who really cared about them. They might react differently and be more or less traumatized by an
Yeah,
experience like 9/11.
yeah,
When I and there's something stuck in my mind about a biblical reference. There's a line, I have no idea where, about the sins of the parents being carried by the children, offspring, the children,
yeah,
and the ACE study kind of shows us how, or at least why, and that is that if a person is a sinner, it's usually because their nervous system is not well regulated. They're in fight or flight, or they're frozen, and they're going to raise kids that are in fight or flight or frozen because of it's called epigenetics, when those markers are passed down to
yeah. That was
your
a big,
offspring.
yeah,
So that's kind of an explanation of how that biblical passage really works.
yeah,
There's one thing they found um, about in the ACE study: the higher your ACE score, the more likely you were to have all sorts of bad habits, like being a IV drug user or being an alcoholic. Um, one of the graphs, I um, I would see different graphs of, if you have a score of 0, you have this likelihood of having this health problem. If your score is 1, you have this, likelihood, and the likelihood goes up the higher your ACE score. And so one of the graphs measured likelihood of having more than 50 sexual partners.
oh wow,
And that one always like boggles my mind. But yeah, the higher your ACE score, the more likely it is you'll be promiscuous or whatever you might call it.
do you think that would be because maybe the person is seeking like it wow, this might not sound right, self-soothing
Yeah,
behavior, not exactly like that, but they're seeking comfort, kind of, really is why they're doing that, maybe.
sure, right. Maybe it's because they learn that their value as a person is measured in how much you please other people.
Yeah.
You know, that might be something that they learned as an adaptation. Oh, I'm okay if I, you know, take care of other people regardless of their own risk to myself.
Right.
That shows up in a lot of different ways, not just sexually. You know, there's you know, Minnesota nice, you know, northern Midwest nice is based on, you know, I got to take care of other people, and in order to be consider myself a valuable person, I have to take care of everybody else, sacrifice myself. It's quite common.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I see a lot of that. Yeah.
hmm
What is the top health condition there is? Like if you have the highest ACE score, what is the biggest health risk that they have? Like, is it heart? Is it cancer? Is it?
It's well, you know, I'm envisioning in my mind a graph, different graphs I've seen for the different health issues, and I don't recall which ones are more closely aligned to ACE score, but it seemed like any major issue, like heart disease, um, emphysema, of course, that's linked to smoking, and smoking is more common in people with a higher ACE score.
Yeah.
Um, and cancer for sure. Um, it's I'm not sure. I think the scientific basis for this is a little questionable, but there's a concept that some people have of a type C behavior, meaning um, a type of behavior that leads to a person being more likely to get cancer,
Hmm.
and that is that same behavior I mentioned. You know, taking care of other people, being real nice, and being a people pleaser. Some people will call that a type C behavior.
So being a people pleaser can be in the study or whatever that you were talking about, this questionable one, or it could be like lead to health risks because,
Yeah,
huh?
right. Um, because being a people pleaser is sort of on the freeze side of things, the freeze response. Freeze response happens when you're a deer and the mountain lion has caught you and it's starting to take chunks out of you. You really shut down. You leave your body if you can, that kind of thing. So it's the nervous system response that leads to depression. So submitting, being a people pleaser is kind of on that side of the nervous system responses, and it messes up your immune system, messes up your digestion, your sleep, all the things that your body does automatically when you're healthy. Being in the freeze, or they also call it fawn. They use the word fawn because then they all start with F. You know, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, faint. So yeah, being a people pleaser can mess up your immune system so that your immune system attacks your own body, like, you know, multiple sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease, I think, is related to that. All the other autoimmune disorders like lupus, and uh, tends to happen a little more often to people who are submissive and people pleasers and that kind of thing.
Do a lot of people who are people pleasers, no, not ever, no, there's a lot that do it just because they're just nice, but they're the ones that are doing it
Right?
out of that flight, freeze, fun. Um, they're doing that kind of like out of a fear, right? They want to please the people so they don't
Yeah.
get like the backlash that,
hmm So they can be accepted and, you know, not rejected. Rejection is like the scariest thing to our nervous system.
yes. Yeah. Um, well, I think we covered just about everything.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a good summary.
yeah, this is
If it's
I
new, if it's really new to a person, they can just listen again.
yeah.
Or
Or you could go to the Paces Connection website,
right, yeah.
research there, and go down a
hmm
rabbit hole there because you could go there and there's plenty other links and different things that you could look
Yeah,
at.
right,
But
right.
yeah, this is, I find these both, like when you were talking to me about these, I found them really interesting. And I thought maybe other people might too. Um, these are really good. Thank
Yeah,
you so much
you're
for
welcome.
coming on and talking. I really appreciate it. You know a lot about this, and
Mhm.
I really appreciate this.
It's my hyper focus.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good information on here, and I'll probably do some more research on it too later on. Um, but yeah, this is really good. Thank you so much for
You are quite
stopping by
welcome.
and chatting. And I know I have, at least I know there's one listener who's anxiously waiting to hear this. So,
Uh,
but I've been
And
hyping this up for the past couple of episodes that I have someone coming on,
cool.
so
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Yeah,
So,
and since I'm semi-retired, I have plenty of time to talk to people if they're interested in yakking about this kind of thing, and they can look me up on Authentic Wellness website, authenticwellnessup.com, I believe is the website, or they can get my number from you.
yep, yep. Um, yes. So be sure to look him up if you have any questions. And he is very knowledgeable and he's a really super nice guy. So um, you will learn a lot if you contact him. Okay. So thank you everybody for stopping by and having a chat. And we'll say goodbye to Mr. Richard Featherly. Thank you so much for coming in.
Bye. Pleasure talking with you.
More later. Bye.
I am the rose.